This is video number 2 for the Lo-Fi sound. The last video, if you haven't checked it out, it's explaining the microphones, what I'm doing with the dampening, what's going on with the kit and tuning and stuff, sort of general sort of mics and mic positioning and stuff like that. But this is the deeper dive, and this is the one probably everybody wants to get into, because I'm going to go into a bit of the processing and how I'm getting this very cool sound. It's wicked. And like I said in the last video, it's very, very hip, this sound now. There's so many different loop packs and stuff that are using it. It's hip hop, it's lo-fi, it's all of the kind of groovy shit that's going on. And it's got that sort of Ringo tea towel sound that they got at Abbey Road. My last video explained that. Somebody mentioned in the comments on my last video that it was nowhere near the Ringo sound, and I had to sort of really disagree because it is totally based on that thing that Ringo did. I've recorded at Abbey Road quite a few times, and I've spoken to the engineers there. I've obviously done a lot of research into Ringo's playing and the sound that they got. So this is based on that sound. Obviously the crunchiness and getting into the more lo-fi thing, the Beatles weren't doing that on purpose, although they did touch on it, I guess sometimes by accident, with what they were doing in the studio post recording. So this is based on a vintage kind of Ringo kit sound. So the tom sound, for instance, is clearly based on that whole come together sound, you know. So very Ringo, with a modern twist, hopefully. What am I doing with the processing? The biggest part of this sound is my Hairchild, which is a copy of a 660 Fairchild, which is what they would have used, the Beatles would have used at Abbey Road. They've still got a couple there. When I used to record at Trevor Horn's studio in London, there was a couple of Fairchilds knocking around, one in the rack, I remember. And this is a beautiful copy from the company called Heritage Audio. That is this microphone, which I explained in the last video, a Shure ribbon mic, and I've literally got it smashed to smithereens. It is cranked and pushed, so that's the crux of the sound. You know, you can read many books, and you can listen to and watch many videos about making recordings and recording drums, but really what you've got to do is just jump in and give it a go, and don't worry about breaking the rules. I was very fortunate when I started recording here that I had some amazing people, and I still do, to reference and to talk about the proper way of doing it. But I'm also very fortunate that I didn't know anything when I started recording, so I'd made mistakes and I just did things that I felt were intuitive. For instance, with a bass drum, I would just turn up the bass frequency on the EQ as much as possible to try and make the bass drum distort or make that contemporary sort of hip hop bass drum sound. On paper, a lot of people would say don't do that because it's distorting. There's far too much low end coming from that microphone. It's not right. But if you listen, it is right. It doesn't look quite right, but strangely it's correct. So just creatively try anything. And this standpoint that I'm giving you now is just mine, and it's just a little insight, a little window into getting this sound and working on recording. But by no means should you listen to me completely. You might do some of the stuff that I'm doing to my drums in your own room, in your own studio, with your own DAW and with your own plugins, and it not work. Or it might work really well, or it might be halfway house. It might be like, okay, that works a little bit for me, but I can't do it as much as Ash is doing it. The point is you've got to push the boundaries with the microphones and what you're doing to them and what you're doing with the plugins. The first time I get a new plugin, I crank it to its absolute maximum and just see what it will do. There's a fantastic producer, mate of mine, that I've done many recordings with, and he was one of the, if not the first person to use auto-tune in an extreme way. He is the producer that produces Cher. I've done 3 albums now with Cher with him. He recorded that song Believe, which was the first time that autotune had been pushed to the point where it made the voice sound almost synthetic. It sounds like this.
Pushing me aside and I can't break through. There's no talking to you. It's so sad that you're leaving. Takes time to believe it.
So he basically pushed autotune. I think it was out that week. I think the plugin dropped the week that he was working with Cher on that song, and he did that to the vocal, and it opened the door to everything that we hear now with hip hop vocals and pop vocals. And basically Mark just cranked it. It was like, what will it sound like if I do this? And that has definitely been my principle with every plugin, every mic, every preamp that I get hold of. I try and push it to its limit, and then of course you can dial it back to safe world whenever you like. But if you don't push it, you'll never know. And that is a definite rule of thumb for me, and I must get that across to you. That's how I've been approaching it. So the snare. This is what I do with EQ. I basically find the sound with the snare drum and see where the EQ band is. I use FabFilter. And you can see with the EQ where the snare drum's peaking and which frequencies are popping up. And what I will do, as I've explained before, is I will push those frequencies and see if I can get even more of the quality and the sort of tonal footprint of the snare drum, and emphasize that and see what that sounds like. And often it works. I do it with all of the drums. So this is golden tip from me. Number one is get a drum, find the sound that it is, and boost that and see what happens. Obviously if your speakers fall off the stand, then maybe you've pushed it a little too much, but just experiment, push it, push higher frequencies, push lower frequencies, and see what kind of tonal sounds you can get out of the drums. I certainly do it with every snare drum now. Some people will say don't do that. Of course, I don't care. I'm doing it and it works for me, and I hope it works for you. So that's the snare drum. Bass drum, very similar approach. Video number 1, I talked about tuning the bass drum higher than I ordinarily do on my other drum kit, to get that sort of knocky sort of kick sound, and it sounds like this. That's the kick. Toms, same deal. find the frequency, push it. You can see here on my door. Hi-hats, lovely crunchy microphone. There's a beautiful Pro Tools native plugin called Lofi, and it essentially degrades the sound of the audio and makes it a little bit distorted. It sounds like this on the whole kit, and it sounds like this also on the hi-hat. This is the Hairchild and what it's doing, and I'm pushing it absolutely to the maximum. This is what it sounds like on its own. So hopefully that has given you a lot more insight to what I'm up to. The next video I'm going to jump into is I'm going to try and break down the swampy, kind of wonky feel. People have wanted me to explain what I'm doing there, and again I can give you my own perspective of it, which is right or wrong, but it is just mine, and I'll show you in the next video. Please subscribe, and I'll keep them coming.